And so I always thought like, well, design is really like creative capital, not just venture capital. Like it has value. And I was like, well, if we're the first ones in the door or it's our idea, whether it's our company or someone else's, like it has this value in the marketplace.
Hello and welcome to Why Design. I'm your host Chris White and we're back with Series 3. If you're new here, this is a podcast about people behind physical product development. Designers, engineers, founders and creative leaders who are shaping the products and companies of tomorrow. And in this series, we're speaking to a brilliant mix of guests from across the industry. So in Series 3, you will hear from Emily Williams at Hydrific, who's bringing startup mentality into a global brand like Lixil and rethinking how innovation works inside large organizations. We've got Sam Shames, co-founder of Ember Labs, who shares what it takes to build a venture-backed wearable tech company straight out of MIT. Stuart Lee from Prime Studio, reflecting on long-term relationships, quiet leadership, and the New York design scene. Jordan Nolman at Sprout Studios, talking about creative culture, mentorship, and how to build a studio that lasts. Jude Pullen, technologist, RCA fellow, and Lego contributor on prototyping, play, and making room for creativity through experimentation. Christian Reed, co-founder of Recon Tools, digging into first principles design and building tools for people who actually use them. Jordan Diatlo from Lead Off Studio, who shares what it's like building a consultancy with real intention and how to hold your ground as a younger founder. Kenny Perkins from Osmo Helmets, reflecting on designing for safety, purpose, and deep emotional impact. And finally, Dan Harden from Whipsaw, wrapping up the series with a sharp and honest look at what it takes to run a successful consultancy in 2025 and beyond. We've got solo founders, in-house leaders, seasoned veterans and rising voices, all bringing their own perspective on creativity, business, and building something that lasts. And to kick it off, I'm joined by someone who's been shaping design culture for decades, Brett Lovelady, founder of ASTRO Studios. This one was recorded remotely, but you can still feel the energy. We talk about his early days at Frog and Luna, launching ASTRO in the heart of the San Francisco's tech scene, and what he calls creative capitalism, a belief that design can and should drive both cultural and commercial impact. We also get into studio models, brand building, lessons from launching ASTRO Gaming, and what comes next after exiting a legacy business. It's punchy, insightful, and full of takeaways, whether you're running a consultancy, launching your own product, or just thinking differently about the value of design. So let's get into Series 3, shall we? Brett, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Chris. This is awesome. Appreciate the opportunity.
It's really great to have you. You are a design industry legend, so it's it's great to have you on the show. Perhaps you could, for those of you who are tuning in and don't know who Brett Lovelady is, perhaps you could do the quick kind of intro.
Sure. So I've been an industrial designer at my core for well over 30 years, 35 years in the industry. Coming out of school, came out of BYU here in Utah a long time ago, and immediately went to California, started working in industry and supercomputers, and then jumped over to consulting and with lunar design and frog design. Realized quite early, if I'm going to work that hard, I might as well start my own studio. And so I had a vision for what ASTRO Studios needed to become. So we started that at the dawn of the internet back in the early 90s. And, for 30 some years, essentially pursued my own pathway in design. And industrial design was a core, but we also were doing branding, consumer insights, putting all of that together to completely commercialize properties. Also from day one, 20% of our business was set up to work on equity-based programs. So taking the opportunity to work for, fees and royalties and equity and any number of hybrids, but mainly so that we could work with startups, and enable them, really bring the power of design early in the process instead of being a kind of a paid for afterthought. In doing that, we probably worked well over 100, different startups, but also had 3 of our own that were private equity and venture backed. Most notably, ASTRO Gaming was something that we did, and we spun off and incubated in our studio. But we did quite a few different companies there. So not only were we kind of doing the consulting side of design for a lot of folks, we were also walking the walk by, running our own businesses and producing product, which I think, I know I was one of those designers that wanted to do that from the beginning. Anyways, put all that together for quite a while. And then a few years ago, I sold the company to a company there in London, actually, PA Consulting. And they've absorbed it and morphed it and done all kinds of things as we've come out of COVID. And so then at this point, I'm actually in between San Francisco and Salt Lake City, advising, consulting, investing, and stirring up a few things.
Interesting. Well, that's awesome. So, thanks for that. And we met out in Vegas, didn't we, at CES? So it was really great to meet you out there. And it was when we got talking, and you went through some of your stories from your time in industry. I was like, we need to record this. We need to get this on the podcast.
Well, you're kind. I appreciate it. Old guys and stories. We like to reminisce. Well, the days in Silicon Valley and the Bay Area.
Yeah, it's all no, but that's what I love. It's it's truly an honor to have you on the show. So let's start at the beginning, shall we? And I think from memory, from our conversation, it wasn't a traditional, it wasn't straight into industrial design. You actually started with illustration and art. But what? Let's go back further. Why design? Where did it all begin for you? And what first pulled you into kind of the world of product design?
Not a problem. So actually, I was an illustrator and a political cartoonist in college. Not studying engineering, realizing that engineering just wasn't enough of where you come up with a big idea and put it out there and get reactions and more of a cartoonist mentality, I guess. And so I started looking around to illustration programs, realized that that was pretty awesome, but I needed to make a living a little faster than that might take. And so the hybrid in between engineering and illustration came about when I stumbled through the ID lab one day in college. And it's like, wait a minute, they're doing all the stuff that I love to do, and can put this together. And then I happened to be fortunate to have a little bit of a business background prior to that, and I realized design is where it starts, and then how do you harness the power of design and put it into business, which again, the difference between art and design for me is the commercialization factor, right? You got a lot more things that have to eventually create revenue for folks. Anyways, that was the genesis of it. Fell in love with the challenge. It's always been a challenge. I think I'm addicted to that. Like, what's the next problem and next opportunity? So that's what started it off in the industrial design space. I was fortunate. I had an internship at IBM in Florida a long, long time ago. And the guys that I met there were so charismatic and loved design, even though they were in a corporate setting. That I'm like, okay, this is the industry for me. And then graduating from school, I'm like, all right, go to California, make my way in the world, pay off student loans, hang out with even more interesting folks. And I think I found myself right in the middle of the renaissance of industrial design in the Bay Area. Yeah. It seemed like the mecca for the rest of the design world at that time.
Absolutely, yeah. You had quite the journey early on, didn't you? Time at IBM. Working with Richard Sapper and Hartmut Esslinger, what kind of impact did that have on you early on?
Oh man, you don't know until you look backwards a little bit. So Richard was at a distance as an intern. I think I was sweeping the floors while he's presenting. And then when I worked at Frog, Hartmut, the founder, is a legend and a half, and then some, and a character. Really learned the power of design, I think, working for him, and the emotion that was just, design is wrapped in. At the same time, it's big business, it's international business. That was the part that I really liked. Also kind of realized that if you are going into design, you really need to know the other disciplines that empower design, or using design as the catalyst to empower the other disciplines. And that's what it takes. So many, different people to come together to actually put something in the market and make it successful. So, working with professionals that were at that stage in their careers and seeing how that worked, like, okay, this is a business, on top of design. So how do you manage those two, working with creative people and a lot of ambiguity, and then at the same time putting it into production. And that's a, I don't know, that's a space I like to play in, and I think I got pretty efficient at kind of bridging the two.
Yeah, massively. No, that's wonderful. So, 94, you founded Astro,
Mm-hmm.
and you said with a mission to fuse culture, creativity, and commerce, and it became one of the most iconic US studios. Not known just for the work, but the way that you worked as
Yeah.
well. What
Yeah.
was the vision when you launched Astro? What
Well,
were you trying to create that didn't exist at the time?
yeah, no, and it's a little bit of a reaction to the opportunity, right? You could see that technology was going to come just screaming into consumer brands, right? And
Mm,
high volume consumer goods, pop culture was a big part of it.
mm,
The designers that I was hanging out with in California, we were just as excited to work on snowboard graphics as laptops and semiconductor equipment, right? Like,
mm,
and I think we wanted to tap into the pop culture, if you will, California, edge of America, West Coast, gateway to Asia that we felt there
mm,
because of all the manufacturing that's going on as well. Lots of energy there. And so with Astro, I was like, okay, well, let's start something that reflects a lot of that same energy. I mean, we were in the shadow, and I mean the shadow of IDEO and Frog
mm,
Design in Palo Alto, and we were, a lot of the other design firms, in the Bay Area. And we're like, well, how do we, really differentiate ourselves? And we decided the best way is just to be who we were. And
mm,
so we started really kind of working in these, high volume, highly emotional areas, surf, skate, snow industry. Worked a lot in Southern California with some great brands. Started working with Nike, started working with HP, Compact way back then before they were acquired. So we were balancing out this sort of lifestyle driven culture brands along with this, high volume consumer goods and emerging technologies.
mm,
So the vision for Astro was to be authentic in that space, a bit irreverent. Honestly, we were a little young and naive. I think we thought, well, everybody's designing for MoMA. That's fine if you get there, but we're going to design for Main Street, right? For mass markets and for high
mm,
impact, and also just high energy. Probably a little too much ADD in there. We didn't do a lot of medical long term big projects,
mm,
but then we tapped into really becoming, I think the uniqueness of it, we became the company that could take your company DNA and take you into new territories.
mm,
And so when we did that for Nike, that was sort of our calling card. And then we replicated that over and over again, where you have a great brand, we'll take you down into this new technology or new market or new demographic.
mm,
The other part of Astro for me was the entrepreneurial side. I'd always sort of considered myself someone who okay, design is awesome, but it's a catalyzer and a magnifier, and it's just the beginning of the process. There's a
mm,
lot of hard work to deliver a product to the market, but we were important, and I wanted to make sure that we captured the value proposition there. So equity as opposed to fees for service only, which nothing wrong
mm,
with that. So we had about an 80-20 split, 80-20, 80 being the fees for service day in and day out with
mm.
Fortune 100 to startups, whoever wanted to fit our
Classic
model.
consultancy.
Yeah, and the other
Yeah.
20% was some sort of creative hybrid.
Mm,
Silicon Valley, I mean, 50% of the world's venture capital was coming from right up the road from us, especially in the 90s and through the dot-com bubbles and whatnot. So it was really easy to sort of tap into the startup culture and be helpful,
mm,
right, and be part of that scene. And out of that, it was like, well, you can pay us, or you can also incentivize us to come along and be partners,
mm,
and that was a lot of fun. The last little nugget of that 20% was licensing maybe some of our own ideas, partnering with companies proactively. Like, hey, we got this idea. What if you produce it and we'll help you do that, and step
mm,
into a royalty position or whatnot. So very kind of a proactive side, which really wasn't happening a lot in that area at that time. Everybody's just sort of fielding briefs.
mm,
And then the last thing was, okay, eventually we started, okay, we're going to do this for ourselves. So we spun up a couple of our own companies, some success, some failures, and
mm.
got to walk on that side of the aisle, so to speak.
So, yeah, I want to dive more into the 20% work and go back right to the beginning. That was the model from day one, I understand, was it, or very early doors? So,
Yeah.
looking back, you know, Were there any that you pitched that to, like any startups you pitched that to that didn't take you up on it because maybe you were too green at that point, or it's new, untested?
Yeah.
That you go, oh damn, they turned into something massive. I mean, we were this close to being part of that,
Yeah.
and then the
Yes.
others. Yeah.
Yeah. More than once. 1994 in Palo Alto was literally the dawn of the internet. Things were just starting to bubble. The Netscapes of the world. I just started, and we had the opportunity because we have a brand team as well, right? So brand and products, together. We had an opportunity to design the first identity for Yahoo, and we pitched that, and they were like, yeah, that's great. Would you guys take stock instead? Right. And it was like, man, we're a new company. We really need the cash. We don't know about this Yahoo thing, right? Whatever. And, and so, we thought about it, and a week later, their venture guys showed up with the team, and we're like, nah, we'll just pay you kids. You don't worry about it. Like they were, so we I don't know, we took our, $20,000-$30,000 project, which was at the time meant a lot to, but we could have had stock, I suppose. Had a similar thing early on with the Google guys, and Google. What's this anyway? So those are the things we kind of missed out on.
Got away.
Yeah. We actually did a project. The very first project that we did was with licensing from the NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, for remote controls of all things. And so we came up with an idea that sort of took the sports enthusiast sitting on the couch with the remote in their hand, put it all together, and we actually licensed it to a company. And we actually were able to get substantial advances on royalties and a big contract. That was our first project. So we had a lot of like, oh, this isn't so hard. We can do this, right? So we started down that path. And I think we had a little more success with companies where we were doing hardcore industrial design and then helping them fully commercialize. And so over the years, we kept working at it in the different models. And some things worked out. You get a nice payday for the bonus pool, and other days that the stock is still in the drawer, right? So it depends.
Yeah, that's the fun, isn't it? So what's the most famous one then, or the one that you're most proud of in terms of those?
So help design and develop and commercialize over 500 products.
Yeah,
and over about 100 brands. Okay. So I have to admit the one I'm most proud of is ASTRO Gaming, because we did everything. We spun it off, and we got it funded and built it and exited. So that probably has to be at the top of the hill. A lot of hubris there. We named it after our own studio, and this was coming off of the Xbox 360, which came off of doing all the original Alienware gaming PCs. So we had this really strong gaming thread. So very proud of that work. It was highly impactful, not only from a culture standpoint, for revenue standpoint for those companies. It helped them helped Alienware springboard into Dell acquiring them, or the acquisition. And all of those were tied together. I would say the most impactful, if I have to talk about it, and all my employees will cringe a little bit, only because I've heard way too much. It was probably when we got the job to do Nike's first electronic products, which were their sports watches. That was actually what put Astro on the world stage, is when we did those products. Nike had not done electronics. We sat between Seiko and Nike and created a whole line of watches that really reset the watch industry. We won a whole bunch of awards for it, and that was sort of the magnet that drew everyone in. But at the same time, it was one of those ones people would go like, do what in our category, what you did for those guys. And and so we created about a $200-300 million business for them in about 3 years. It's Nike, right? So we pretty understand what's going on there. But that one, we replicated kind of the process. We also stayed with Nike for almost 20 years, doing their first hockey helmets, their first golf clubs, their first in a lot of different categories, all the way to the fuel band, doing all the industrial design and product design, really the definition of a lot of it. Early on, people will give you a brief that's sort of like, I want a watch that does this, I want like a sweatband that does that, that also talks to your phone. And like, what do you think that is? And that's the brief, right? Or, we want a palm killer. Like, what's a palm killer? Like, well, Palm ran away with the PDA market, and so we want you to come up with something that'll knock them off that. Like, okay, that might be the brief, as opposed to, a lot of elaborate research and things that maybe don't have time for.
So how long into Astro was it then that you kind of won that Nike project? And I'm guessing that was then the springboard onto, to just capital the business forward, winning that.
Yeah, we were working in the gaming space a bit, and also in the PC supercomputer space and laptop space a little bit. But the Nike product came along when they started an advanced concept team, do basically advanced concepts and equipment design. And some really great contacts there had been set aside. Two guys with some money and said, "Go find the guys that would understand this." And we pitched and we won the pitch, and then we got to sit on a plane between Japan and Portland, and for about 3 years, designing all kinds of watches, which is a dream project, and is a wearable, and it's very highly visible, and price point was great. You could buy one for your friends and your mom and everybody else if you wanted, and just kind of fell into that part of it. But anyways, that project, that along with, like, we won Design of the Decade with IDSA and Business Week, and then it snowballed into some other awards, and so all of a sudden it was just a calling card that people knew us for, and it's sort of like fortunate that was the one. It was about 3 years into the studio being open that we got that project. And then we stayed with that team to just explore all kinds of other things while they built a watch team. After about 3 years, we're like, can we do something else? Well, like eyewear or golf clubs or something. And so we got to go and be the scout team, if you will, for other areas, working inside the company and outside the company, again, bridging that gap between partners. Some partners that were like, okay, that didn't work. And so what we did was valuable in them making the decision that that's not a great partnership. So, it was a lot of fun. It was in the early kind of business creation cycle that you would think, would come out of maybe marketing or research or, but it actually was coming out of the design arm, which, we were fortunate that Nike, they've been very design centric and design led for a long time. The funny part was almost every time we did an electronic product, it felt like eventually it would end up back in Apple's camp or something. It was like, okay, we started this fire, but we don't know where to take it. So, hey, Apple, can you pick this up and run with it? And, they're just down the street from us as well. So that was I always kind of felt like it was
sounds wild. Just what a really interesting and exciting kind of time to be around, and a place to be around as well. In terms of that project, would you say that was the one that really captured the Astro philosophy at its best, or is there another one where you think, this is the project that Astro?
I think it did early on, and then we replicated it. We morphed it into something that I call Astro Theory, and and a big part of that was to just lock in, like, why was this special? How do we replicate this? Is it worth replicating? Right? And how do we communicate that with new clients and employees and things? And I think it actually set the tone for the company. That was one of a few projects that were like that. I mean, we went deep into headphones, we went deep into gaming, we went deep into audio, wearables, almost anything with, wires, bits, and batteries. That was a new territory. And so it really just depended on, where we needed to focus, or maybe even what we were interested in. Because after a while, it's sort of like, okay, we haven't done this. Let's go talk to that industry and see if, our way of working, our process makes sense for them.
So that review process, that kind of looking at, like you say, Astro Theory, that's something you were continually looking at, and would you put that down to, or your success down to that? It's like never standing still, never taking anything for granted. It's like, well, let's reflect. What did we do well? What can we repeat?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's a little bit like this conversation, right? Where it's like, okay, what is it that I don't know. Looking back, what worked? What was yours? What was uniquely yours? We spent a lot of time trying to figure out the differentiating aspects. So we were fortunate that we lived at this epicenter, if you will, of culture, design, and technology. And most of our clients wanted some combination of those where they felt like they were maybe a little lacking. And a lot of it happened to be culture. Like we were fortunate to express, and in our process, that we were just closer to people. We were the human advocate in the process, or we might understand trend a little bit better than our corporate partners, right? Or maybe, in a lot of cases we'd have like Japanese or Korean clients or Chinese clients that would come and like, hey, how do we approach the American market? You guys seem to understand pop culture really well, and you also get technology, so let's work together. So I think that was something we wanted to like make sure we were consistently authentic in. And our studio was set up that way, right? It was very much a designer habitat where people could come culturally, technologically experiment along with the lifestyle part and the design part of maybe hopefully doing their best work.
Wow, that's awesome. That's brilliant. So let's talk about creative capitalism then, because you mentioned that on our briefing call.
Well, you've gotten some hints at it, right? Which is, I was the CEO of ASTRO Gaming. We started that and early on with the venture folks. And, so I'm a designer in a design-led company. And I think a lot of it comes back to vision and consistency of vision. And so at the same time, you're like, I got to get it into the market. There's got to be profit margin, in order to like hire the best people and to pay them well to do this work and to expand, to go to Europe and to go to Asia and to like go, do all the things we wanted to do. So you've got to make it a business. And so I always thought like, well, design is really like creative capital, not just venture capital. Like it has value. And that comes back to that value chain, which is like, in fact, it was Hartman that said, if you don't value yourself first, in the process, no one else will. And I was like, well, if we're the first ones in the door, or it's our idea, whether it's our company or someone else's, like it has this value in the marketplace. At least this is how we approach it. And so more and more, I found myself kind of helping catalyze companies, starting new brands, being more of a fire starter in that space. And I'm like, well, I'm not really a venture capitalist, but more of a creative capitalist. And what I mean by that in the positive sense is taking an idea and putting commercial value to it and getting it to the marketplace to let the market decide if if they like the product and they want more of it, and they like the brand and they like what you stand for. And so that becomes really fun, to be honest, and kind of addictive. And it's one thing to build a design studio, which I love doing because it's like the ultimate playground. But also like, oh, we got an idea and we're going to get it into the market and it's going to create jobs and revenue and relationships that we never would have gotten to otherwise. And so that's the role, if you will, to me, of creative capitalist. With a bunch of venture people and private equity folks they're really good at creating return on investment and money and empowering entrepreneurs. And I'm like, well, we're kind of doing the same thing, but can't we help craft the vision and the product and the creative positioning, right? The branding, the naming. Like we've named so many things. It was kind of crazy how many things we had to name along the way. And also like, the packaging, the out of box experience, the retail experience. And even in the last 10 years or so, a lot more of like, oh, let's do the launch video. What is all of our, influencer strategy? What are we looking like in digital space? So that would become part of the package, right? Like, okay, we can create a whole new brand for you and the assets that help do that. You have to put on a bit of a business, mind and overlay, or at least be able to converse with the guys that are going to be responsible and pay for all of that.
Yeah, it's not just a sketch, is it? I love what you said. It's talking about the difference between fire starters and fire tenders. A lot of designers make the great at starting fires, but if it falls down, you need to be able to build the structure to keep it burning. I
think I love the fact that it starts out of the ether a lot of times, or a spark from a conversation or a request. Yeah. But while we put the design skills toward it and bring it to life, and that's awesome and so powerful and catalyzing. But I'm telling you, it's like 10, 15% of the whole deal, right? After that, it is hard work and busting rock and consistency. And then, do it again, right? And keep that other design creative plate spinning while you're delivering something to the market and dealing with supply chain or something, right? Yeah. And I think when designers recognize that, they'll also know like, okay, this is where I can be the most impactful and not feel like, oh, okay, well, we're the most important thing on the planet, or the project, where no, you're actually just really, really important to get it up and running and moving, and then shepherding it and being the human advocate, the design advocate,
Mm-hmm.
voice of vision and reason, right? So staying connected to it. And to do that, you've got to understand what the other guys are up against, right? To stay
Mm-hmm.
connected to your project, not just sort of throw it over the fence and hope it gets produced, which, sometimes that's just the way it is in consulting. It's like, well, we only got to take it so far. Or even in-house, people will be like, okay, great, we're divisional, right? Do the design work and then hand it to engineering and get out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever their setup is. Designers should really stick with it and stay, but recognize that there's a lot of other people working really hard to deliver to the market.
Yeah,
So,
it just seems you're just making more work for yourself or more work for other people if you're not kind of tending it, just chucking it over the fence, because there's going to be questions and you're just causing problems, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
But so ASTRO Gaming, if I'm right in saying, is one of your most successful spin-outs. What would you say you learned kind of most from taking that all the way through from Spark through to acquisition? Because it's now part of Logitech, is it?
Yeah, Logitech owns the brand. It went well. Let's see if I can answer that one somewhat short, and feel free to tell me to be quiet. So after coming off of the Xbox 360 and doing a lot of research there, as well as all our Alienware PC work, and just being in the industry, like really close to the industry, we saw the emergence of professional gaming, and we're like, okay, this is a pretty cool space. What's going to happen here? And then you look into it and you're like, it's massive and people aren't paying much attention. And then you go talk to like pro gamers, which is where we always start, right? It's like who has a problem to solve? And so we dove deep into, the pits, if you will, of gaming leagues. And we recognized that audio and headphones and communication was a big challenge. And so we came up with some ideas on how to do that. And that was the genesis. And of course, we're like, oh, well, people know us for designing Alienware and Xbox, so we'll just use ASTRO Gaming as the name and spin it off as, from the studio. A little hubris, but it was fun and seemed to make some sense. So we raised a round of venture capital, had a really awesome chairman and a really good partner. And you asked me what I learned. Well, what I learned is from an earlier company that we started and actually folded that was deeper in the studio. What I learned was on this one with ASTRO Gaming, I needed to set it up separately. And so even though it was incubated in the studio and a lot of people were involved with the studio, I brought in a great partner. It was a Stanford MBA, a great chairman who was like connected to, global markets and financing and whatnot. And then with those guys, we built a company that was a direct to consumer business separate, but we were intertwined as we were covering all the design and the development. And I was this bridge of a CEO, not only with the vision side of it, but also kind of helping commercialize the brand. Long story. We built that up as pioneers in this industry. When we started, it was mainly on high-end gaming headphones, and we wanted to be professional grade equipment for the pros that were playing every day, and this was their livelihood. And so we put everything we knew about design into making something that was just like solved a lot of problems and fit the right feature set. But it was too expensive for retail. Retail's like, we sell $75 gaming headphones and you're just $300, right? So all of a sudden we were pioneering, right? We were going to be like, okay, we got to reset the market. So we started doing that. And so for 6 years, we ran a direct to consumer business with almost no retail at all. We did that actually out of London and for most of Europe, as well as, our home base there in California. We built up the company, raised another round of venture funding. That was around the 2009, 10 timeframe, which is a little crazy. Anyways, we built it up over about 6 or 7 years, and now we're like, okay, we're at scale. We need to go to retail. And so our venture folks helped us out, and we started looking for other investors or partners. And so we ended up selling the company in 2011 to Skullcandy, who was massive at retail and was pre-IPO. And we thought, like, this is a great partnership. They understand retail. They've got supply chain galore in Asia. We sold the company, and then I helped run it as an interim brand CEO, if you will, for ASTRO Gaming. And my partner and I built it up to about 40-50 million in sales. And then I left. I'm like, okay, no more fire tending. I'm going back to fire starting. I went back into the studio full time, where my partners and directors have been running the company. We're doing an awesome job. And so I was still kind of bridging that. But anyways, long story longer. By 2017, Skull Candy, who had been public a few years, were taken private again, and they
Mm.
split the company and they sold ASTRO Gaming, which was about half the company at that time, to Logitech. And there's some articles about it out there and stuff.
Mm.
And Logitech took over and started building the brand and merging it and kind of
Mm.
helping them grow their Logitech G brand. So very long story for that, but that was where I got my design creative capitalist MBA, I guess, working with
Yeah.
amazing people to deliver product, and loved it. Loved every, started with 5 guys in
Mm.
the basement, and next thing you know, there's 40 people on a whole floor of the office, and then
Mm.
we spun them off into a whole nother company setup. And so if I come back to your question, full loop, what I learned at that time was know what you do really well and hire people that do what they do really well and like to do it, like a
Mm.
CFO. CFO is awesome. You have to have one if you're actually taking people's money. You're an investor. You're investor relations, or you're talking to Best Buy and GameStop, and you've got to manage giant POs and money flow and banking, and it just goes on and on. That's just one example, but you do that with
Mm.
engineering and manufacturing and supply chain and customer service and blah blah blah, all this stuff. Again, very important, but winging it, is one of those things. Like, wait, there's professionals. Like, I can take a photograph, but I know there's photographers that are a lot better. I'd
Yeah.
rather hire them. And so, the sooner you can get to that part, the better. In any new venture, I think you're working on, whether it's small or large.
Well, yeah, I hear that a lot in terms of the, get the operational side nailed down as soon as you can,
Yeah,
because once that, it makes scaling a lot easier if you've got the systems and processes in place and the people that know how to put them in and tend to them.
yeah.
That'll
So
make everything a lot easier.
selfishly, that's one of the only things you can sell at the end of it. And
Yeah.
like, otherwise you bought it, right? But is
Well,
their
yeah.
systems, your brand, and your really your brand reputation and goodwill. Those are the things
Mm.
that go with the company, but systems are a big part of it. And I didn't know that early on. It's like it gets back to that replicating what's working and not
Mm.
have to reinvent the wheel every time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be very difficult to sell a business, no matter what industry sector you're in, if the owner is kind of in the weeds and in the day to day. If the owner is the business, it's
Yeah,
a lot
we
different.
owner
So,
starters get in the way pretty quickly. At
yeah,
some point, it seems like.
it's a lot of fun though, isn't it? So, no, that's brilliant. In terms of just a random question, you mentioned that you've named a lot of companies or helped name a lot of companies. Do you have a technique or a tip for coming up with names quickly? I know I put you on the spot there.
No, that's fine. I mean, we have a pretty good, we had a process. Again, coming back to a system.
Yeah.
Every design studio's got a process. Oh, this is our patented, proven process. It's like,
Hmm.
and we sort of had one of those as well. Naming kind of fell into that as well. We called it the 5D process, which
Mm-hmm.
was dialogue, define, design, develop, deploy. Okay, so
Mm.
that's cute, right? 5Ds. It's kind of works. But that first one, dialogue, was really important. And so to get in and understand what either the founder of the company
Mm.
or whoever's in charge of the project, so like really understand the positioning of what it is we were trying to do, who we're trying to speak to in the marketplace, who we're trying to inspire and get excited about a new brand or position or name. And so we would try to really define what we were going to do before we started, designing it, right? So the third one
Mm.
was always design. So a good dialogue, define it really well. So from naming standpoint, naming's tough. It's
Mm.
really hard. Part of it's very subjective, but again, you put it in context, right? So we would come up with names, maybe have different themes, if you will, right? And we talked in terms of thematics quite often, like,
Mm.
oh, this is a more technological theme, right? Or this one is a more emotional theme, or more organic theme, or whatever it might be.
Mm.
And it wasn't just in naming. This would work for almost all the other design discipline pieces of it, but in naming it worked as well. And so we would come up with name concepts, if you will, and then we would put them through our own filters. We'd get it to a short list of things that we liked. We'd have some brainstorms. We usually try
Mm.
to have some people that knew nothing about it, as well as those of us that were way too immersed in it, and come together and kind of basically spit good names out and see what made sense. Edit those down, and then before you edit too far, is go do a legal check. because you can come up with the best name in the world and the lawyers will stop you cold in your tracks if either not available, already taken, confusing in the marketplace, take too long to get that, that name, all kinds of stuff. So you get it to a short list, and then you take that. Okay, this is clearing. This is what's inspiring. This is what's working. Now you've got a matrix, and you say, okay, these are the ones we're going to present. Let's put them into more context, which might be putting them on a package, putting them on a product, putting them on a website, putting them on an app, whatever it might be, and then present those and the story and coming up with a backstory. Almost every great brand name, logo, identity, a really good, authentic backstory, even if you kind of make it up after the fact sometimes, is really important, I think, to get people to coalesce around an idea. So that was sort of the process. And then we keep funneling down, just like you would with, here's a bunch of design concepts, and you keep whittling down to the one you're going to execute on. But then, the legal guys would usually come into play. I got one quick story there that was kind of crazy. So Western Digital, the hard drive company, massive hard drive company, came to us and said, you guys know gaming. We're not in gaming. We want a brand that's absolutely, focused on gamers, authentic to them. We saw what you did with ASTRO Gaming. We want a similar world. So we created something called WD Black for them. WD Black had a whole bunch of other names that were way better. And they were on a really tight timeline. And we got to this meeting where everybody was there, and we're like, we like these other names, and we got all these things going. And we were doing everything, like the whole brand, ID, packaging, retail, digital, like every aspect of the brand as like a property, right? Like the full property. So we're getting there, we're presenting, and we're sitting there, and the lawyer is in the room, and he's quiet. And finally he goes, look, guys, he goes, we got to be in 120 countries within like 8 months. We don't have time to go and make sure these clear around the world. We can't fight for it, blah, 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 blah. Like the name checks really well in all the major countries, but like, actually, here's a list of names we already own. Can you just pick one of these? Because it's the only way we're going to get this into production. So WD Black was a name that they owned, kind of like, if you were, a company, a wine company, it might be, Black was like your reserve or your premium brand. Yeah. So anyways, we took that, made it work with all of the look and feel of everything that was going on. And, they did like $30-40 million in sales in the first year, and it's continued to fly ever since. So anyways, naming is subjective. Sometimes it comes down to crazy stuff like lawyers, having to make sure you got a business you can work with. But anyways, I know it's a little bit of an off ramp, but it was a fun story.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's whilst you've not had to come up with the name there, I guess you still created a backstory in some respects. You've created a dialogue to go with that to make the best of it. So that's brilliant. So the 5D process then again is dialogue, define, design, develop, and deploy. And
a lot more deploy these days than used to be for designers. Like to get it into the market, be part of the story, like for designers to basically, be part of a video or be part of the social media presence or the launch, like show up at the launch party and tell the story, that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, especially with the kind of Kickstarters of the world, it's the, meet the designer, talk to the walkthrough. It's it's no good just being great at sketching. You've got to be a professional media personality now as well.
Some days do your best,
Yeah, absolutely. So, good. Where do you see design having the most impact in the life cycle of a product? Before we jump back in, I want to take a moment to tell you about something we're building alongside this podcast, the Why Design community. We're bringing together people across the hardware and physical product development space, designers, engineers, founders, and leaders, creating a space to connect, share ideas, and tackle the real challenges shaping our industry. We've been running online huddles to explore key topics, collaborating on projects, organising both in-person and virtual events, and even setting up pre-networking groups to help people meet ahead of major industry events. And if you want to be part of it, we've set up a WhatsApp group where the conversation keeps flowing between episodes and events. You can find all the details at teamkodu.com/events, or just drop me a note on LinkedIn and I'll happily add you in. I'll also make sure the links are included in the show notes. But that's all from me now. Let's get back to the conversation.
Wow, that's a good question. I think it's in the beginning still, beginning stages, but being part of the conversation really
Mm,
early, so that a lot of us as designers would listen to what people are asking for and looking for, and then hop up on a whiteboard and go, "Oh, is this what you mean?" Right?
mm,
Or, "Hey, hold that thought. We'll come back with some of our illustrations or our
mm,
mock-ups or whatever it might be." And the power of design, I think, hasn't diminished. I think AI is, as a good friend of mine says, is making mediocrity free. And so there's a lot of things that people go like, oh, that's super good and polished and whatnot. But I think it's design's job now is to be an editor and a curator on top of a generator of new creative content. And if you're not there in the beginning, it's really hard to come in and sort of sweep up after the elephant and make
mm,
something out of this, right? You've got to be part of it. So I really advocate for being in the C-suite, being in the decision maker meetings, being as early as possible, if not even the instigator, if you will,
mm,
of the conversation in the first place. And that's the cool thing about design, right? Like you can come up with some imagery and a positioning or a quick video
mm,
clip or an interview and go like, hey, I think we've got something here, guys. Let me show you this. And you can sway a meeting. You can change the direction of a business.
mm,
So if you're there, try to be part of the early conversation. Be part of the visualization team, if you will, for the
mm.
big idea people. If they're not in the design side of things, partner with them. And that empowerment is like it's 2 plus 2 makes 10, right? Like you come together to basically create a lot of value. So that's and then if well, worst case, sometimes don't ask permission, right? Just go do it. Like be proactive versus reactive. That's one of our theory lines, by the way. But
Have you got any examples of where that's worked really well, where you've just run with something? Obviously, your own ventures aside, but with a client, I suppose.
yeah, a variety. Well, because a lot of times people would come to us not with a real well-defined brief,
Mm,
right? And so they might say something like, okay, we've got like this emerging EDM music, electronic dance music, EDM market, right? How do we talk to them in a very crowded space with new headphones, for example? Okay. And that might be, again, the whole brief. And
yeah.
so then we go back and like, okay, dive into the culture. Okay. Luckily, design teams, part of it maybe, or some younger folks, or actually go out
Mm,
and experience what's going on, bring that back, and then create a perspective or a point of view, right? Fundamentally, above all, I believe design is a point of view. So you need to have one. You got to go develop one usually.
mm,
And so, whether it was a new headphone company that was directly marketed to like emerging, EDM, if you wave, if you will, movement coming out of
yeah.
college, as an example, or in the case of like when we did the watches that I mentioned before, we got our most inspiration by talking to college and high school athletes, coaches, people that ran, constantly. We started running ourselves. You had to experience that yourself, even more than
Mm,
maybe you were doing before. All of that feeds into what I think is, developing that point of view early on, and then, that's for us was just became process. It's like
mm,
someone would walk in with a new product that they needed, especially in a commodity market. Like, do
mm,
you really need another shoe? Do you really need another headphone? Do you really, like, okay, well, yeah, but you've got a good idea. We can take that, put it in context,
mm,
and build it up. And by, and doing that, um, create value for them and, maybe take market share or mind
mm.
share or just express an air of futurism, whatever was needed at the time.
I love it. Yeah, that's great. So let's talk about the future of studios and kind of you've stepped back, obviously stepped away from Astro a little while ago now. And you're now working on a new leaner, more focused model for creative business, less infrastructure, more intent. I mean, this might be one of those areas where we're bridging or dancing on the line of what we can and can't
Oh,
have on the the
oh,
finished podcast.
yeah.
But you know, what inspired you? You know, and I know that at the time PA were going through quite a lot of acquisitions, but what inspired you to step back from Astro and think about what's next.
Well, the original vision for Astro with PA was to roll up a variety of other design development firms under the brand and
Mm,
establish a footprint for PA in America. As we were just getting that started, coming out of the pandemic, lots of
mm,
upheaval. The company was half acquired by another company, and
mm,
they decided that the strategy was better that they just continue to focus on PA and building that brand, if you will,
mm.
around the world. So they bought a couple of other design firms, and just brought together some really amazing people.
Yeah.
Really balance out this development side along with the management consulting. For me, after the Astro brand was being essentially retired, I was like, no, I need to go do something else. And so
Mm,
about 3 years of shepherding the company and then seeing
mm,
how the company was being reconstructed, I decided it was time to move on. And in doing so, kind of gave myself a break. I've been working since I was like 14 years old, so I was like,
yeah.
okay, I'll take a year off. And then just started looking at everything. We're all working so differently now, even than I would
Mm,
say 5, 6 years ago. The impact of remote has hurt a lot of design studios.
mm,
And I actually believe in the physicality of a studio, the culture, the interplay, I think is way more valuable than just everything being developed in a Figma board and
mm,
on a Zoom screen. And so I think that it'll be interesting to see how that comes about. But you got to work with who might be the best of the best in certain areas. So I've been really fortunate to work with like amazing designers, collaborators, clients around the world. And so I'm like, okay, if I step back to what would be an optimum scenario. And so starting to put together, if you will, for lack of a better term, a little bit of a collective
yeah.
of ways to
Super
work
group.
with, exactly. Work with the different all stars in different industries
Mm,
that can kind of come together under a bit of a construct and still a studio model. So
mm,
that there are people outside and around the world, there's people inside, and then out of that, can we be effective? I think the people that already have been doing it for a while are fairly well proven, and in this
mm,
day and time, I think anything you can do to manage risk, like why not go with people that have done it
mm,
a lot over and over and have that kind of success, and then also attract new young talent that can spark that and be part of the process. And so creating a bit more of an engine that
mm.
is open, a little smaller, a little leaner, maybe a little more pointed. And there's you get to this stage of your career and it's like, okay, I like working on that, not so much that. So let's be a little bit more proactively directed. And then I'm advising, investing, and doing a variety of other things with some startups. And
Mm.
honestly, that's pretty addictive. It's like, it's one of those things, just you get to go work with other people. They're responsible for it in the end, and you get to like give your 2 cents and hopefully make it a little better for them.
Well, you've got so much experience to kind of pull lessons from, haven't you? In terms of you've literally been there, done it, got the t-shirt, um, and you've personally through Astro as well. You'll have seen the studio model evolve, and I guess you were at the forefront of kind of forcing that evolution in a lot of respects. But how do you see the model kind of evolving over the next 5 to 10 years? I know a lot of studio owners and leaders I speak to,
Yeah.
both in the UK and the States, are finding it tough now, especially if they're
Hmm.
focused on ID as opposed to like more holistic kind of design. So, well, yeah, have you got the crystal ball? What do you see coming?
No, I mean, honestly, some of it's been the same forever, which is, industrial design has always been a little bit of a like, explain yourself. What do you really do? Outside of
Mm-hmm.
product, and then product design. And then our digital brothers and sisters have taken over product
Mm-hmm.
design, and as part of what they do. So I think there's going to be that constant battle of educating. It's never gone away. Like, okay, this is what we do. This is why we're important. We're the architects of, new ideas for products and, commercial experiences and things. But I don't think that's going to change. I think it, maybe gets a little harder here and there, but you can't stop kind of, defining and communicating what it is you do and what our industry of design is about. It's got to be more diversified, not only geographically, but people and perspectives.
Mm.
I mean, the global impact, you need design for, for one culture, but next thing you know, like, oh, my company's taken off and I'm in 10 different cultures that look at things completely different. You got to try to consider that
Mm.
early on. I know early on, like we would get asked at Astro, like, okay, hey, can you design something for the Japanese market, right? We're working for 18-year-old office girls in Japan, and we're like looking around like that's none of us, like how do we get that right? So you reach out and you talk to a design studio there, and you're like, hey, this is what's going on. Do you understand this? Can you help us understand and get a grasp on that? Can you be part of the project? Right? Can you
Mm.
help collaborate in this area so we can authentically communicate to again, who it is we're designing and developing for? And
Mm.
that's a small illustration, but I think now that's even a lot easier to do. And I
Mm.
think you got to be more open, and in how you construct a solution for either your program you're trying to move forward or your client's program. And if you can be that solution provider, it's just looking at all the new tools to do that. I don't
Mm.
think it's as easy when you're not in the same environment. To be honest, I'm
Mm.
struggling with that. Maybe that's just because that's how we came together. We had a design habitat, right? When I was at Frog, we had 6 studios around the world. You could go
Mm.
into one studio and it was like, whoa, the energy is amazing. You go into another one and it's like, did you have a funeral in here? It's like, I mean, it just depends on, who the
Yeah.
dynamic in the mix was, right? But then if everybody's so disconnected, if you will, and just kind of comes together, and everybody's this big on a screen, and it's just you're missing something. You're missing the
Mm.
spontaneity, and so I'm a big advocate of the studio. Try to get it together, even if they're small little node studios, and
Mm.
then try to get those people together as much as possible, especially if you're collaborating, or multidisciplinary, which
Mm.
I think is a big part of it. The tools, I mean, obviously AI is like everybody's,
Yeah.
panicked about as well. And I don't know, I've been through enough, I guess, tool adoptions and,
Mm.
and rethinks that even though this one's moving at the speed of AI, I think it's a matter of, okay, designers figure it out, curate it, edit it. Like we talked about earlier,
Mm.
be the people that can put it into context so you can help the other people in other disciplines utilize the power of
Mm.
what's going on. Be part of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely, and it very much is a tool. It's and you still you need to master use that tool. Otherwise, like you said
That's what's
earlier,
really fun.
it's yeah.
Yeah, I'm taking a webinar from a past employee who's just an awesome guy, who dove into it 2 or 3 years ago, and just to like learn even at a peripheral level, like how does this all, what do all these tools do? And then if you've created stuff in the past, you go like, oh wow, that would really help me do this and that, and I can
Mm.
explore stuff I've never done before. And so I think part of it is maybe just developing a very positive attitude and experimenting, just like a
Mm.
little kid with a new box of crayons. It's like, what can I do with this? I can draw on the walls, I can draw on the furniture, draw on the paper, see what comes of it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great. So the kind of the final section I wanted to run into is community mentorship and culture, because you mentioned, yeah, when we spoke before, throughout your career, you've always stayed involved in the next generation of designers, mentoring through accelerators, invested in creative culture. Why has mentorship been such a priority for yourself, and what do you get from it?
Well, I'll start there. Selfishly, you get the positive energy and the vibes from other like enthusiastic, maybe even slightly naive, highly energetic designers with vision and that want to do
Mm.
things, and that's really empowering to kind of like validate what you might be doing as a designer and as a mentor. You're like, okay, this has some impact. There is some value that they don't know everything, or wait a minute, you know what? You just inspired me to think about something differently. That makes me a better mentor or a better
Mm.
advisor or collaborator. I do kind of find myself, like most design consultants, stepping into an ownership mentality when you're dealing with a client or a startup. And part of that is because there's big voids you need to fill usually.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
other part of it is like it's fun, right? It's like oh, I'm helping create something from scratch, and so to do that well, I think is just part of the cycle of design, right? So you start with
Mm.
young folks, bring them to the meeting. Like we used to bring our interns to like the biggest meetings that we would have. Like here, you got to hear this firsthand. You got to see what's going on.
Yeah.
They may have just gotten there the day before, who knows? But they would show up, right? Or you see a designer that's just struggling, and it's like, okay, look, how do I like help this person stop, put their pencil down, pick up the idea that they've already got, or take a break or whatever, without like squelching their soul, their design, as a design
Mm.
director, and bring them along. So over time, you kind of learn some of the techniques that do that, and kind of to pull the best out of folks. That's really rewarding, but it's also like I think it's super valuable to help people self-edit, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
during the design process, and then empowering people like, hey, you know what, you can go down that path, that's awesome, but you probably be better off going on this path, giving guidance,
Mm.
direction, helping people make decisions. Sometimes when
Mm-hmm.
you're so close to something, you can't see what's working, what's not.
Yeah.
And I think that's where designers that get off on their own, just work at
Mm-hmm.
home, only work remote, don't have the sounding board, aren't involving somebody that maybe has been
Yeah.
down this path. I think it's key, to have that. And so again, I come back to like we always said, our place was a designer habitat, if you will. And we had at one point we had 3 offices, and each office was different. But the one thing you tried to do was to keep that nurturing. All ideas are
Mm.
welcome. Like let's put your heart out on the table every day, and if you get it beat up, that's fine. It's not personal. Let's get back to it the next day. And when we had that openness at all these 3 studios,
Mm.
um, the work was amazing. Okay, it's when people became judgmental and became hierarchical, and like, oh no,
Mm.
it has to go through this one director's filter. Then you've got like you can end up with a studio style, not always a good one. So
Mm.
anyway,
Yeah.
that's a rambling response to what you just.
No, that's great. You've kind of reminded me of some of the stories that are through Creativity Inc. as well, and some of the challenges they had when they were getting bigger, and
Yeah,
you start getting these little silos, and
very
there's
natural.
yeah, but yeah, it's pretty natural. You've got to keep a grip on it, which is what it's a lot easier to do when you're smaller, faster, leaner, isn't it? So
And when you're in the same space, I mean,
yeah,
yeah, it's like I
absolutely.
think the pandemic created a lot of design therapists as well as
Yeah.
design mentors, advisors.
Absolutely, yeah. So, do you do that as the mentoring? Do you do it as like a? Is there an organized group that you do it through, or is it kind of do you kind of self-regulate that? Because I guess you've got to be
Yeah.
you've got to be mindful of your time as well as the impact you can offer.
Well, in the studio, like during the Astro Studio days, the fortunate thing is we had multiple people that could cover those requests, if you will.
Yeah.
But to get involved in accelerators and incubators, it's like
Mm.
formally, we were very involved, and I was involved in quite a few for
Mm-hmm.
long periods of time. As a role, and that we would play. But it was the commitment was maybe a couple of days here and there.
Yeah.
Schools, and, even VC accelerators or innovation teams with
Mm-hmm.
companies, are good ways to do that. A lot of times it ends up with being, one of them that'll be like, hey, we've got like 6 companies that we're incubating here. Can you come
Mm.
talk to them? Right. So it's a little more informal for me at this
Yeah.
stage. But early on, getting involved with like RGA and RGA Ventures was awesome out of New
Mm-hmm.
York. Techstars a bit, some accelerators. There was one in the Bay Area called Highway One, which was like 120 companies, and there
Mm.
was tons of other design teams that were there mentoring and talking to folks as well.
Mm.
But again, someone had to kind of create, either like a 6 month or 6 week or
Mm.
2 year environment for those things to be developed, and then that was a more natural advisory state for design
Mm-hmm.
in some ways. These days, like it comes together where even out of the design community or out of the business community that I have experience in, they'll be like, come talk to this class or come talk to that this group or this. I have this one startup who's just needs someone to kind of shake them up on about their design approach or whatever it might
Mm.
be. So it's pretty informal.
Yeah.
And then the organizations that are out there,
Mm.
IDSAs and the AIGAs and stuff. If you get connected there, the schools that are out there in design, that's always a great place to go and be useful. The next generation of designers. People think of it in terms of give back. I think it kind of just a mutual exchange. Quite honestly, it's a lot of fun to again feed off that that inspiration and energy.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think it's human nature to want to be helpful. So if you can tap into that and have fun with it as well, it's my philosophy with everything really is try and be helpful, add value, and it's a lot of fun along the way, isn't it? Because you generally see that you're having a positive impact.
It's hard to manage your time, I know you asked about that, but I found that if I just make the time, it's well worth it.
Yeah.
There's just sometimes you have to I can't do it, but someone else can, or wait till I have more free time later if you don't mind, that kind of thing. But I try not to worry about that part of it too much.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always pays off in the end, and I guess there's a win-win for both parties as well, isn't it? You're helping them out in the early days. You're part of that community. Who are they going to come to, or who are they going to speak to when they have a design challenge a little bit later on? You're in a great position there.
I think most designers, fortunate or unfortunate, we kind of fall in love with the challenge and the ideas, no matter what.
Yeah.
Whether we should or not, it's a promiscuous sort of relationship. Like, oh, that looks good. Oh, that looks good too. Okay, what about this one? It's like, okay, sometimes you have to focus and limit yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. But just on reflection, and it kind of ties back to your origins with Astro and your 80-20 kind of principles there. Advice for young designers looking to start a studio, or launch a product, or indeed kind of studio owners that are kind of maybe a bit more experienced but feeling the pressure. What advice would you give to get into that kind of, I guess, more sustainable from a commercial point of view business model, or just a general advice?
It's a good question. I think a couple of things. This is going to sound maybe overly practical, but if you're starting your own studio or you're starting your own company, you're starting a business. We don't learn that in design school. So go talk to the people that you respect that are in other kinds of businesses, even not even, if you can find somebody who's doing exactly what you're doing and where they're at, then go talk to them as well. Find out where their challenges have been, what their solutions have been. For example, you probably need one admin person for every 4 designers, for example. There's some rules of thumb, or you're going to need somebody that actually focuses on marketing every day while you're designing and even doing business development and, managing clients, right? So learn as many of the parts of what it takes to run a business, any kind of business, service business, if that's the case, or your own product producing business. Do the research, just like you would do on a project. Go find out what that takes, and get enough of a vision for what that is, and educate yourself on, I look at a spreadsheet, my eyes roll back in my head, but I kind of needed to know what a P&L statement was, right? And how to talk to banks and how to finance stuff, and okay, learn that in design school. So be open to learning more about it, and then empowering somebody else, like we talked about earlier, right? Oh, okay, I need a bookkeeper. If I do that, then I'll have more time to go sell more design business and hire more people, right? Or whatever that package might be. So do the practical things of what it takes to run and learn about how to run a business if you're going to open your own studio or start your own products. The other part is, don't let anybody talk you out of it either, though. A lot of people will be like, oh, it's just too hard. I just want to be an employee. That's fine. I mean, thank goodness, right? I had awesome employees. But if you really are, you want to create your own environment, your own ethos, your own culture, your own brand, your own equity, right? Your own value, take the time, plan it out. They call them business plans for a reason, map it out, do a mind map design style on a whiteboard. That's a great business plan, right? Just, then erase it every other day and put a new one in, or, move things around, but make it a creative project. And I think if you do those things, you'll realize oh, wow, the design process allows me to build this kind of a business. If I actually listen to what I probably am telling my clients needs to go through a process of development. And that part doesn't change, I don't think, no matter what industry you're really in. But for designers in general, there's always a little bit grass is greener. Like, oh, if I could just do this, every one of my ideas would go through, or every one of my things would be produced. And it's like you got to be in a position of influence. So a lot of people start their own businesses in order to have that. So, okay, now that you've got it, what are you going to do with it so that it's successful and lasts for more time than maybe you're I don't know, maybe even your own attention or focus can give it. That's why people partner too, by the way. Partnerships, you and I can do a whole other podcast on partnerships. They're hard. They're hard to do, but almost necessary at certain points too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, just calling from my own experience, it was starting Kodu is, could have been a lot easier. Like the first year, if I had a partner going in as a co-founder, certainly there's 2 sets of eyes looking at the market, been able to divvy out some of the admin tasks. But the ownership is halved. It's you're sharing it, and it's like a marriage. You've got to make sure that everyone's, you're both on the same page, and you're in it for the same reasons. And you complement each other in terms of your skill sets. But
it's very similar.
Yeah, taking that step and actually starting to build out the foundations of a team, then it's like, okay, I actually need a plan now. I can't just do the stuff I know I can do well. It's like I need a team around me. But no, that's brilliant. So we've spent obviously much of this conversation looking backwards. But what are you most excited about, kind of going forwards, Brett?
Well, as one of the fringe benefits of being in the at the beginning of a lot of things in design, that's the place I want to stay. So I'm always looking for, like, where can you have the most influence based on your skill set or even interest? That's what your passion and your heart will follow. So for me, I think getting closer to like where new businesses, new products, new ideas come from is a big part of it. So there's either like the equity side and the venture side, or there's the school side, for example. There's a lot of master's level incubators that are actually in universities and colleges where startups are just bubbling up. You go all the way back to the Y Combinator side of things in Stanford, and then you see these other companies or other institutions doing those kind of things. That area of just being where things start is the most intriguing to me. At the same time, like probably a little bit more of the classic, maybe picking up and doing a little bit of my own design work again, do a little bit more writing, do a little bit more, I'll go back to do some more cartooning, who knows,
Awesome. No, it's very exciting. I'm looking forward to following your journey, this next path of your design journey. So wonderful.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch.
Absolutely. Brett, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. And
thanks for the opportunity and for putting up with all the blather.
Not at all. It's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you again.
You're welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Why Design, proudly powered by Kodu. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd be grateful if you could take a moment to leave a review wherever you're listening. It really helps others discover the podcast. And while you're at it, why not share it with a friend or colleague who'd enjoy it too? If you'd like to stay connected or learn more about the work we're doing at Kodu, head over to teamkodu.com or connect with me, Chris White, on LinkedIn. As the founder of Kodu, I help hardware founders and product leaders tackle some of their biggest challenges, whether that's hiring the right design and engineering talent, shaping product strategy, or navigating the complexities of scaling a hardware business. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.